So our life is about making choices. Everywhere we look, there are choices to be made, whether it's which flight I'm going to take to which country. I was at the airport recently and just looking at all the vast array of different places you can go these days. How do you choose? Or maybe not so much nowadays, but when I was little, going into a sweet shop and just that array of jars. Remember jars where they measured out sweets? But in lots of things in life, there are choices to be made. And how do we do it well? Our personality is different for each of us. Some of us, we love having lots of different things to choose from. Others of us, we maybe just want a couple of things and it's either or. Makes things much easier. Some people, they want a limited amount of choice. And depending on where we sit within that, it will allow us to make decisions in different ways. Some folks make quick decisions, maybe too quick, some would say. Others make slower, more considered decisions. Maybe too slow, others would say. Some people require all the research and all the information, and others are happy to go on intuition and instinct. Which are you? Finding out what your personality kind of take is on making decisions will definitely help you to think, okay, which of these bits are strengths? I can play to those. Which bits of these are maybe weaknesses? I might need to kind of work with those or just accept them if they're not getting in the way. So that's the first thing. When it comes to making decisions, what is your natural way of doing it based on your personality and the way you behave in situations? Regardless of what our personality is, making decisions, it's an important facet of life, but also of leadership. And sometimes we are guilty of finding, okay, I'm thinking of doing this, and my choice is do this or don't do this. And you could argue that it's a choice, but it's not a great choice. And maybe, well, definitely, we want a number of different options to choose from. Linus Pauling said that if you want the best idea, you need to have lots of ideas. Now, I'm always encouraging people, don't just brainstorm until you've got one that you think is workable. Keep going until you've got a whole array of different options. Then you can analyse and decide which might be workable or which we could adapt to make them workable. But get lots of options. This or not this, it's a bit binary, and in fact it's not really. We're just deciding whether we're going to do it or not. So start looking at how can we get multiple options to play with. That way we can then think about finding that which is the best. And in terms of rules for brainstorming, I always say get as many ideas as possible, but don't discount any at the start. Allow people to suggest things, whatever you might think of them. They might be completely off the wall ideas, but that's okay. Get it suggested, record it, write it down, write everything down, record all the ideas. You can come back and analyse them later. The danger is someone says something and we go, nah, we've tried that, move on. How does that person react? How many more ideas will they suggest? And actually, maybe there's something workable in it that we've just quashed and not considered. If we get all the ideas in and we record them all, then some of the new ideas in the later stages will be looking at those. How can we tweak and adapt those? It's worth remembering that some people are at the innovation end of the creative spectrum, other people are at the adaptation end of the creative spectrum. It's not how creative are we, it's how are we creative. And coming up with new ideas could be innovative, they could be adaptive. Fine, all are good. Get all the ideas out there. That's what you're looking for. If you only have one idea, it is de facto the best idea of all the ideas that you've got. When it comes to making decisions, we said that you want to have lots of options. But when it comes to discussing the options, you need to narrow it down somehow. There was some work done in, how when you go into a supermarket and there's maybe a taste table where, here's some things that we want to give you a sample of. And if there's only one, you take it and you like it or you don't like it. Doesn't really promote you buying it, particularly if you are in the group that doesn't like it. But they've tested things where actually you've got a whole array of options, and people will come and they'll try this one, they'll try that one, they'll try this one. But with too many options to choose from, people still don't buy much more. The best versions of this work when there's 2 or 3 options maybe, and okay, which one do I like best out of these? Because when there's a whole load of them, you might like several. Doesn't help you narrow it down to which one will I buy. 2 or 3, okay, I prefer that one compared to those other 2, I'll buy that. And when it comes to having the ideas, you want to narrow it down somehow. If you're in a group, particularly, if there's going to be a group discussion about it, you need to narrow it down first. If you've got too many ideas to discuss, it takes forever, and the discussion probably goes round and round and round, because the 10 people have 10 different things that they prefer. So narrow it down. There are all sorts of options for this. Maybe even just a blind vote. Stick them all up on a piece of paper and people just allocate dots to them is the simplest kind of quick and dirty version that I use quite often in facilitating groups. But yeah, decide, okay, which are we going to seriously consider, and then talk them through. When it comes to making decisions, we need to have options. And sometimes the problem isn't having too many options and narrowing it down. Sometimes the problem is, I think, too linear, too logical, too next step. I can't imagine more than just what I see as the next logical option. And we need to broaden our horizons to other things that maybe we can't yet see how they'll work, but they're interesting ideas. We need to promote new thinkings in ourselves or in our peers, and we need some mechanism to do that. And for that, we want to have some tools at our disposal. There's various things that I use. I used to use a dictionary for a random organised search, but I came across recently the idea of using What 3 Words. So this is one from Dave Stewart of Fresh Air Leadership. He had us using What 3 Words to find what is our location here, and the 3 words come up on the app, and then using those 3 words, how does each word inspire us to think differently about our problem or our business or whatever it is that we're trying to work through. And so that's a brilliant way of actually thinking, okay, what does this word say about where we're trying to get to as a company, or what does that word say about how we solve this particular problem? If you've not tried it, get the app on your phone or put it up on your desktop and just find the 3 words for the location where you're based or where you currently are, and see what that comes up with. And it might be that the words are parachute, fun, and enable. And okay, what does a parachute say about me trying to solve this particular... Oh, well, we could parachute someone else in. Or what is it that stops us going too quickly? Or, what is colourful that we could make use of? Or actually, how do we package things into a really neat bundle? All things that might be inspired by the word parachute. But we can look at any word and start to think, okay, what does that say about our problem? How does that link to our problem somehow? So, what 3 words? Random organised search. No longer need a dictionary. Great. Reverse, de-reverse. Sometimes we look at, okay, what is the thing that we're trying to solve? Let's turn that on its head. Let's solve that problem. Now turn the solution on its head, and is this a workable option? And so maybe, we need more people coming through the door. Okay, let's reverse that. We need to stop people coming through the door because we've got too many. Okay, how would we stop people coming through the door? We might make the doorway smaller. We might put up some barriers. Whatever. Okay, let's reverse that. Right, so we need to make the doorway bigger. We need to remove the barriers. Whatever. So reverse, de-reverse. Other things that I might use is, okay, how can I think about, okay, we've got one option in front of us. If that option became impossible, what would I do instead? Or if I didn't spend the money or the time on this thing that I'm thinking of doing, what would I spend that time or money on instead? What would I rather be doing with it? And sometimes that helps us to just think a little bit differently. And so there are various different methods that you can use to consider what other options might we create, so that when it comes to making the decision, it's not either or. In fact, we rarely want either or. We want to maybe try and think both and. Can we take several options and combine them into some uber solution that actually is even better than we could ever have imagined? So generate more options. And if you want some help with that, it's one of the things I love doing when it comes to working with groups. How can I help them to just come up with new ideas that maybe we evaluate them later and think, that's not going to work. But if you don't have the idea, you can't analyse it. So get the ideas out there. One final thing that I often offer to people in terms of making decisions, and maybe sometimes coming up with new ideas for that, is the idea of invoking someone else. And so, superheroes. Okay, we've got this problem. How would Superman tackle it? And okay, Superman has particular superpowers, so he will do it in a particular way. But how would the Hulk deal with this? Or picking someone else, Iron Man or another superhero, a comic book character. Well, this isn't real, we can have some fun with this. But then starting to think, okay, well, I don't have Superman's superpowers, but if he would deal with it this way, are there other ways that we can maybe, in a similar vein, can we tackle it that way? So thinking superhero is an interesting option. When it comes to making decisions, we've talked about having several options to choose from, but we need to then make a choice. And knowing which way shall I turn is really important. And sometimes, there are lots of different ways of evaluating, some based on the technical capacity of it or the cost of it, but actually being able to take two factors. Maybe it is, okay, how well does this solution work and how much does it cost? And actually on a scrap of paper even, taking the different options and saying, okay, that one's expensive, but it's really good. Okay, that one's less expensive, but it's quite good. Or that one's much cheaper, but it's 2/3 good. Great. So we can start to evaluate that in a fairly logical way. What are two items that are important in terms of finding a solution, and weigh those up against each other. But the simplest one that I really quite like, particularly when it's decisions that I must make about me and my way forwards, which is a lot of what I do within coaching, is actually getting people to think from a different perspective. What would a trusted friend or a trusted advisor say to you as they look in on your situation? And particularly someone who knows you well or knows your situation well, they're a brilliant person to be thinking about, because as they stand on the sidelines, as they look in, they're not hampered by any of the emotional attachments that we have. And so they think in a much clearer way whilst knowing our situation. So and maybe you could go and actually talk to your friend, or just imagine if they were standing on the sidelines looking in on my situation, what would they be recommending that I do? So when it comes to evaluating, yes, there are various techniques you can use, but particularly when it's about your decisions, about you and how you move forwards, just thinking about, okay, how would someone close to me be considering this and looking at the options? As a coach, a lot of my job is helping folks to find a way forward. If you look at the classic GROW framework of coaching, okay, what is your goal? Where are you trying to get to? What is your reality? People can answer those relatively easily, but then it's the generating options bit where folks often get stuck. And I need to help them to maybe generate some options so that they can then decide between these options and think, okay, that is what I'm going to do. That is my way forwards, which is the W of grow. And yet I'm not the expert in them or their industry or their job role or whatever. And so I need to come in and ask some good questions to help folks stop and think about what actually would be a good way forwards. And not necessarily which one will work best, but out of these different things, which do I like most? Because if they like that option, they're more likely to give lots of time and energy to it and actually try to make it work. If they just think, it's a good option, yeah, I ought to work harder on it, and it's often not as successful. So helping people to, express the reality, but then come up with options and choose them is part of what I do as a coach. Coming in as an external to the situation, maybe a bit like the trusted advisor that we talked about before. If as a leader, you're trying to help someone in a coaching kind of style to make decisions, it becomes a bit different because you come in as maybe as the technical expert and you actually need to almost, sit on your hands, keep your mouth shut, because you've got an idea of how it could work, but you want them to develop and grow and come up with their own suggestions. And so, you'll need to invoke various different strategies and get really good at, I literally sit on my hands if I want to stop myself talking, but not come up with a suggestion. If you come up with a suggestion and you are their boss, they'll go, thank you, I love that, but they won't work as well in it as if it was their suggestion. So, adopting a coaching style as a leader, you need to think about helping them to come up with their own options. But actually, sometimes I have to do that as well, because sometimes people are they're stuck. And particularly folks who maybe they've either been in this rut for too long and they can't imagine anything outside of it, or in fact, they've just come in quite new to the situation and they don't know enough to be able to think about other options. Maybe we need to suggest some things. Top tip, if you're going to suggest some options to people, suggest at least 3. Why? Because if you suggest one, as I said before, they will grasp that and run with it. But if you suggest 3, it's enough to maybe prime the pump for them to be thinking about more options. But it also, even if no other options come up, they've still got 3 and they can choose which one they like best. Therefore, which one they are more likely to go and work on. So 3 options, whatever they might be. And it might be that you deliberately seed it with one good option, one great option if they really work hard, and one actually quite a rubbish option, but maybe it's easy, and see which one they opt for. It tells you all sorts of other things about managing that person too. Finally, when it comes to making decisions, you as the decider, what is your role in all this? You've gone through a process of thinking about your reality and you've considered a number of options and you've maybe chosen an option which, this is my way forwards. Great. But with any decision-making process, it's great to come up with a decision, but then you need to do something. Having an ideal decision, super. It changes nothing if you then don't take action. You know what they say, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And you need to be able to take that step forwards so that something changes. And as you see the change happening and you see that it's not dreadful, you can start to think about taking the next step and the next, and you become emboldened with the fact that you've not yet tripped over. Great. So once you've decided, then you need to take action, because if you don't step forwards in this world with the rate of change that we currently have, then actually you're going backwards. Someone said, and I can't remember who, but if the rate of change inside is slower than the rate of change outside, then failure occurs. And so we need to take some steps forwards, even if we're not really sure. So particularly if you're a perfectionist and you want to make a perfect decision, you're going to have to accept that, okay, it's good enough, I must take action. And if you're unsure of the consequences, well, you'll never find out the consequences if you don't do anything. So take a step forwards and see, okay, what consequences are there? And if you're just, not fully committed yet, do something. It might be that, okay, I need this one more step to get fully committed. Fine, give it one more step, put a deadline on it so that you don't just keep thinking and keep idealizing to the nth degree, because you'll never ever change anything. If you keep doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. If you make a change and do something differently, then that's when you advance, you move forwards into whatever the next reality is. So do something. Maybe just take that courageous step and see where it goes. But if you're stepping into something new, what's your review date? How long are you going to give it until you stop and think, how well is this working? Or are you just going to meander on and see what happens, and maybe it'll work out and maybe it... No. Have a review date and think, okay, how is this working? Is it turning out positively? Is it turning out even better than we expected? Or do I need to change something so I'm getting the results that I want? Or maybe I've followed this option because it was, it seemed the most appealing, but it's not getting me where I wanted. Fine, let's go back and look at the other options and think, which others of these should I now attempt? Now, it might be that you just didn't put enough time and effort into the first option, but hopefully you will see that when you stop and review. And it's only once you've exhausted that you think, okay, what are the other options? But find some options, decide on an option, and then do something. And this is a lot of what my job as a coach entails, helping people to find options, decide, and move, so that things change for them, so that their leadership becomes better, and so that they then start to recognise, okay, I've moved from the kind of leader I was to where I'm at now, and I'm on a path to where I will be in the future. And for me, that's what gets me up in the morning, helping people to develop themselves along that journey so that they get better. If you want any help with making decisions, then feel free to get in touch with me. I'm always happy to help. I love this sort of stuff, and we can have a chat and see where that takes us.